The aircrew we lost was Fernando Ribas-Dominicci. Nando, we call him. Before the raid, I don't know how long, a month maybe, the majors list was released, and Fernando was on the list. Normally in the Air Force, the way a guy finds out that he is promoted, at least in a fighter squadron, is his squadron commander and his squadron commander's wife shows up at his door the night before the list is released the next day, because they're told, with a bottle of champagne, and he knows that he's been promoted. And so we showed up at Nando's door. Anyway, before the Libya raid, Fernando, I was sitting there at my desk, and there was a knock at my door, and I looked, and it was Fernando, and he was peeping around the door. And he said, "You got a minute?" I said, "Sure." So he comes in, and he's got his hand behind him. He said, "I just wanted to thank you for getting me promoted." And I said, "Fernando, I didn't get you promoted. You got yourself promoted." He said, No, you gave me the opportunities." I said, "No, Fernando." He said, "I just wanted to thank you, and here's a bottle of the best rum that they make in Puerto Rico." And he came across, and I got up, and we did a manly hug, and I opened that bottle of rum, and I took a swig out of it, and I gave it to Nando, and he took a swig out of it. A few days later, we launched on the Libya raid. And every year, on the anniversary of the raid, every year, I went to my liquor cabinet, and I poured a little bit of rum from a bottle of the best rum they did make in Puerto Rico, and I toasted to the memory of Nando and Paul Lorence. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell Mickey. She never knew it. I didn't tell anybody. It comes time for the 20th anniversary of the raid, and Lake and Heath is hosting a reunion of the Libya raiders. And there's going to be a dining in with the officers and their wives, us in our tuxedos. And you make a toast at these dining ins, and I know what I want to do. I want to perform a toast to the memory of Paul and Fernando. But I'm thinking, if I take this bottle with me and Customs takes it away from me, there's going to be an international incident. And besides that, this is 20 years afterwards, and I started taking smaller and smaller and smaller swigs out of this bottle, because I'm thinking, shit, if I knew I was going to live this long, I wouldn't have taken so much. And so I poured, those bottles that you get when you stay at a motel that's got some shaving lotion in here, or toothpaste, whatever, soap. I took one of those. I had some, and I rinsed it out real good, and I poured some of that rum in that bottle. And I put it in my shaving kit, and I took it. And so there we are in this room with all the men and their wives. And one of the things they did is they did a roll call of all the crew names, the mission names. And if you were present, you stood up and said, for example, he said, "Remit 3-1," and me and Gurney stood up and said, "Present." And he went through the entire list. And when he, first of all, Paul Lawrence's wife, nor Nando's wife had ever remarried. And when we did the raid, Fernando had a little son. We called him Fernandito. He was about 3 years old. And 20 years later, he's 23. He's a big guy. Well, he and his mother showed up. She had never remarried, so they were sitting over there. And Paul Lawrence had a son. And his wife had never remarried. And he was a grown son now. And so when they called out their call sign, the two sons stood up and said, "Present." And then when it came time for other toast, I said, "I have a toast." And so I stood up and I told everybody about the bottle. And I said, and I told them I didn't bring the bottle because I was worried. But I said, "I have some of the rum. And I said, I have just a very little bit of it left, but I poured some in here. And I want to propose a toast to the memory of Fernando, Nando, and to Paul Lorence. Not a dry eye, including me. And we toasted to the memory of Nando and Paul. And after it was over, I went over and I hugged Nando's wife, Blanca, beautiful woman. And I said, did you know about the bottle? And she said, of course. She said, we talked about that. I knew he gave that to you, but I didn't know about this. And she said, what kind of rum? What's the name of the rum? And so I had taken a picture of the bottle before I went in case anybody, on my phone, in case anybody wanted to know what it looked like. And so I got her email address and I sent it to her. About 2 weeks later, I received a box, FedEx, and inside was 6 bottles of the best rum that they make in Puerto Rico. And so I took a bottle of that rum and I poured it into the bottle that Fernando had given me and mixed it with it. So I have plenty. And Blanca said, if you ever run out, let me know. And I said, well, it's 6 bottles. It ought to last me a long time. But when we unveiled the F-111 here at the park, at Aviation Heritage Park, I invited all of my squadron mates. And we had a Rooster, my nickname, Rooster reunion. And I had a dinner for all of them on Friday night before the hangar party on Saturday. And at each one of their places, why, I had a miniature bottle of the best rum that they make in Puerto Rico. And I used the initial bottle and I poured a toast and we stood, squadron mates, and we toasted to the memory of Paul and to Fernando. And I still do that. And now what happens is there is on the internet all of the Lake and Heath Raiders. And every year we get alerted for everybody to make sure that they charge their glass. And at the exact time that the crash occurred, we raise our toast wherever we are in the United States or abroad. The time is the same. Everybody toasts. And then the internet is just full of pictures of guys that are sending on their email about their toasts. And we do it every year. To this year, we do it every year.